Look, I need to get this out somewhere because I'm still trying to process what happened, and honestly, don't know if I'm overreacting or if this is as messed up as it feels. So here's the deal. My fiancée Scarlett and I have been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months. Since I've known her, she's been absolutely obsessed with seeing the Northern Lights. Like, had aurora photos all over her Pinterest, constantly sending me Instagram videos of people in Iceland. The whole thing. It was genuinely her biggest dream. Last month was her birthday, and I decided to make it happen. I saved up for months, planned this whole elaborate trip to Iceland, and surprised her with it. We're talking a week-long adventure, glass igloo accommodation, Northern Lights tours, the works. I put serious thought and money into this because I wanted to give her something meaningful. The trip itself was incredible, but definitely had its challenges. It's Iceland in February, so obviously it was cold and remote. The glass igloo was beautiful but chilly at night. Some of the tour locations had outdoor bathroom facilities, which meant trekking through snow to use them. We were definitely roughing it more than our usual vacations. But that's part of the Iceland experience, right? And we saw them. The Northern Lights were absolutely spectacular. Scarlett actually cried when they first appeared and kept saying how magical and perfect everything was. I got us this commemorative certificate from the tour company as a keepsake. She seemed genuinely happy and grateful the entire time we were there, posted tons of photos, told everyone how amazing it was. Fast forward to last Saturday, Scarlett's cousin Brady was having his engagement party. Big family gathering, probably 60 people including aunts, uncles, family, friends, the whole extended crew. I've gotten to know these people over the years, shared holidays and dinners with them. They're good people and I thought they respected me. Everything was going fine at the party until Scarlett had a few drinks and someone asked about our recent travels. That's when everything went completely sideways. Scarlett suddenly grabbed everyone's attention and started going off about our Iceland trip, but not in a good way. She was actively mocking the entire experience and making me the punchline. She started telling everyone how I dragged her to what she called frozen hell just to watch the sky's screensaver. She pulled out her phone and started showing people photos of the outdoor bathroom facilities, describing in graphic detail how I made her pee behind glaciers, like some kind of wilderness survival situation. She was getting louder and more animated, telling everyone how the glass igloo had no walls and she froze her butt off while I just stood around taking photos like some obsessed tourist. People were laughing and she was feeding off the attention, getting more and more dramatic with each detail. Her uncle Andres asked if I had planned everything myself, and that's when she really lost it. She started yelling about how that's exactly why it was torture, that I probably Googled how to ruin a vacation and followed the instructions perfectly. Then she actually grabbed the microphone from the DJ setup, like physically took it, and announced to the entire party that ladies should never date a man who thinks romance is hypothermia. But the absolute worst part, the thing I still can't get over, was what she did next. She reached into her purse and pulled out the Aurora certificate from our trip. She had brought it to the party for some reason, maybe to show people originally, and she took that certificate, something I was genuinely proud to give her, and shoved it directly into Brady's engagement cake while yelling about how this was what I was so proud of. 60 people watched her destroy something that represented weeks of planning and saving and caring about her happiness. Everyone was laughing and pulling out their phones to record. Her mom, Norma, was gasping and covering her mouth, but also kind of giggling along with everyone else. Nobody told her to stop. Nobody said anything about how inappropriate this was. I just stood there watching my fiancé completely trash me in front of her entire family. These are people I've shared Thanksgiving dinner with, people I thought knew me and respected me, and they were all laughing at me like I was some kind of joke. So I walked up to where she had dropped the microphone, picked it up, and told everyone they should enjoy the rest of the party because tomorrow, things were going to be very different. Then I left. The drive home was the first time I'd thought clearly about our relationship in months. See, here's what none of those people at the party knew. The apartment we live in, lease is in my name only because her credit wasn't good enough when we moved in together. The car she drives every day, financed through my credit with her as an authorized user. Her credit cards, connected to my accounts because she had debt problems and asked me to help her rebuild her credit. For the past 2 years, I've been essentially floating her entire lifestyle because I thought we were building something together. I never made her feel bad about it or held it over her head. I just quietly handled things because that's what you do when you love someone and want to help them succeed. But sitting in that car, thinking about how easily she threw away something I worked so hard to give her, how she turned my gesture of love into a public joke, how her whole family laughed while she destroyed something meaningful, that changed everything for me. Sunday morning, I started making phone calls, called the apartment management about lease changes, called the bank about the car loan, called the credit card companies about removing authorized users. I wasn't angry or vindictive during these conversations. I was just practical and matter-of-fact about protecting myself. When Scarlett came home Sunday evening, she immediately wanted to pretend nothing had happened. She said she was just having fun and everyone knew she was kidding around. When I told her I was seriously reconsidering our relationship, she got defensive and said I was being dramatic about some harmless party jokes. That's when I explained what I had spent my Sunday arranging. The lease situation, the car financing, the credit cards. I told her she needed to figure out her living situation because I was done financially supporting someone who had such little respect for me that she would humiliate me publicly for entertainment. She completely lost it, started crying and saying I was overreacting, that she really did love the Iceland trip, that she was just trying to be funny for her family because that's how they interact with each other. She begged me to reconsider and promised she would call everyone and apologize. But here's what I realized. She's not sorry she humiliated me. She's sorry there are consequences. There's a huge difference between those two things. It's been 3 days now, and she's been cycling between tearful apologies and angry accusations that I'm being controlling and manipulative. She's called her mom, her sister, even Brady, trying to get them to convince me that I'm overreacting to what she keeps calling party humor. The interesting thing is that some of her family members are now saying they thought her behavior was inappropriate, but none of them said anything at the time. Convenient hindsight, I guess. I keep thinking about watching her destroy that certificate, something that represented not just money, but time and thought and genuine care about making her happy. She turned it into a punchline and physically destroyed it for laughs. Scarlett has been staying at her sister's place since Sunday. The lease changes go into effect this Friday regardless of what we decide about the relationship. I'm not backing down on the financial stuff because I realize now that I've been enabling someone who doesn't actually respect me. What's really bothering me is that I'm starting to remember other times she's made jokes at my expense in front of people. Times when she's corrected me or dismissed things I've said during family gatherings. I always brushed it off as her being comfortable enough with me to tease. But now I'm wondering if this is just who she is, and I've been making excuses for behavior that was never okay. The part that hurts most is that I genuinely thought I was doing something beautiful for her. The Northern Lights trip wasn't just a vacation, it was me paying attention to something she cared about and making it happen. And she repaid that by making me look like an idiot in front of everyone we know. So I guess my question is, am I handling this the right way? Part of me feels bad because she's clearly panicking about the financial changes and maybe I'm being too harsh. But another part of me thinks about how easily she trashed me for laughs and wonders what else she said about me when I wasn't around to hear it. Is this the kind of wake-up call she needed about how relationships actually work? Or am I being vindictive? Because right now I honestly can't tell the difference between protecting myself and punishing her. All I know is that I can't keep pretending this kind of treatment is acceptable just because she calls it jokes. The lease paperwork gets finalized Friday morning either way. I guess we'll see what happens after that. Update 1. Well, this whole situation has completely exploded, and I'm honestly still processing everything that's happened since my last post. You guys asked for updates, so buckle up because this gets messy. First off, thanks to everyone who commented on my original post. Reading your responses really helped me realize I wasn't overreacting. A lot of you pointed out that public humiliation like that isn't just a joke, it's a deliberate choice to hurt someone. And that really resonated with me. So Friday morning came and I went to finalize the lease changes. Scarlett didn't show up, which honestly was probably for the best. No dramatic confrontations at the rental office, no last-minute begging. She had texted me that she understood and would figure things out. So I thought maybe we could handle this like adults. I was wrong. Friday evening, she came by to get more of her stuff while I was there. That's when everything really came out. She immediately started in on how I was being vindictive and cruel for cutting off her financial support over what she kept calling a harmless joke. I tried to explain again that humiliating me in front of 60 people wasn't harmless, but she just kept dismissing it. Then she said something that really got to me. She told me that her family has always thought I was too sensitive and that they've been wondering for months why she puts up with someone who can't take a joke. Apparently, this has been an ongoing conversation behind my back. Her mom, Norma, has been telling people that I'm too serious. Her sister thinks I'm boring, and they've all been encouraging Scarlett to find someone with a better sense of humor. So the Iceland party wasn't just Scarlett being drunk and stupid, it was her finally expressing what her whole family actually thinks about me. They've been viewing me as some uptight guy who doesn't deserve Scarlett this entire time. This led to a massive argument where I asked her why she stayed with someone she and her family apparently find so inadequate. That's when she dropped the real bomb. She told me that she's been feeling trapped in our relationship for over a year, because I make myself so indispensable financially that she felt like she couldn't leave even when she wanted to. According to Scarlett, I've been using money to control the relationship. When I pointed out that she asked me to help with her credit and finances, she said that was manipulation on my part because I made her feel like she needed my help. Apparently, offering to help your partner with debt problems is actually a form of emotional abuse because it creates dependency. The mental gymnastics were incredible. She managed to reframe every generous thing I've done as calculated manipulation designed to trap her. The Iceland trip wasn't a thoughtful gift. It was me pressuring her to be grateful for something she never really wanted. Paying her bills wasn't supportive. It was controlling. Helping her get established financially wasn't loving. It was creating artificial dependency. But here's the thing that really got me. When I asked her why she didn't just break up with me if she felt so trapped, she admitted that she liked the lifestyle too much to give it up. She got used to not worrying about money, not having to budget, not having to stress about bills. She wanted the financial benefits without the relationship, but didn't know how to get out without losing everything. So the plan, apparently, was to make me break up with her. The increasing disrespect, the public jokes at my expense, the family encouraging her to find someone better. It was all designed to either make me so miserable that I'd leave, or push me to the point where I'd get fed up and end things myself. The Iceland humiliation was supposed to be the final straw. She expected me to either accept being treated like garbage indefinitely or break up with her and still let her keep all the financial benefits, because I'd feel too guilty to cut her off completely. What she didn't expect was that I'd end the relationship and the financial support at the same time. She thought she could have it both ways, get rid of the relationship she didn't want while keeping the lifestyle she did want. This revelation led to an even bigger fight where she accused me of being a vindictive person who uses money as a weapon. When I pointed out that she just admitted to deliberately trying to manipulate me into breaking up with her, she said that was different because she was trying to free herself from an unhealthy situation. The conversation went in circles for 2 hours. Every time I'd point out her contradictions, she'd flip it back to how I was being controlling or manipulative. It was like talking to someone who had completely rewritten reality to make herself the victim of every situation. The worst part was when she started crying and saying that she did love me, just not the way I wanted to be loved. She said she cared about me as a person, but felt suffocated by my expectations of gratitude and appreciation. Apparently, wanting your partner to treat you with basic respect is an unreasonable expectation. By the time she left, I was emotionally exhausted and questioning my own sanity. She's so good at twisting things around that I started wondering if maybe I really was being too controlling or sensitive. But then Saturday happened, and everything became crystal clear. Brady texted me and asked if I wanted to meet up for coffee. Turns out he's been feeling terrible about what happened at his party and wanted to apologize properly. We met at this place downtown, and he basically confirmed everything I'd been suspecting about Scarlett and her family's attitude toward me. Brady told me that Scarlett has been complaining about our relationship at family gatherings for months. She's been telling everyone that she feels trapped, that I'm too needy, that I expect too much gratitude for basic things like paying bills. The family has been hearing this one-sided version of our relationship where I'm this controlling guy who uses money to manipulate her emotions. But here's what Brady also told me. He said that every time Scarlett talks about feeling trapped, she immediately follows it up with how comfortable her life is and how much she'd have to give up if she left me. She's been openly discussing her dilemma about wanting out of the relationship but not wanting to lose the financial stability. The family intervention at the party wasn't spontaneous. They had been planning to push me to my breaking point for weeks. The microphone thing, encouraging her to tell embarrassing stories, laughing at my expense. It was all coordinated to make me either submit to being treated like garbage or get fed up and leave. Brady felt terrible because he realized afterward that they had essentially bullied me at his own engagement party. He said watching his family laugh while Scarlett destroyed something meaningful to me made him sick, and he's been fighting with his parents about it all week. He also told me something that really put things in perspective. Apparently, Scarlett has done this before with previous boyfriends. She gets into relationships with guys who can provide financial stability, enjoys the benefits for a while, then starts creating drama and conflict until they either break up with her or get so fed up they leave. But she's never had to deal with someone actually cutting off the financial benefits when the relationship ended. Her pattern has always been to find guys who feel too guilty or too attached to completely cut ties, so she ends up keeping some benefits even after things are over. Ex-boyfriends who still help with rent, still let her use their streaming accounts, still pick up dinner checks when they run into each other. She expected me to follow the same pattern, break up, but still help her out because that's what nice guys do. Brady apologized for his family's behavior and said he's been thinking about the kind of person he wants to marry and the kind of family he wants to build. Watching them coordinate to humiliate me made him realize some uncomfortable things about his own family dynamics. He asked if I was really done with Scarlett or if there was any chance of working things out. When I told him what she'd admitted about deliberately trying to manipulate me into breaking up with her, he just shook his head and said he wasn't surprised. Apparently, she's been asking family members if they think I'll eventually soften up and start helping her financially again once the initial anger wears off. She's been framing it as me just being hurt and reactive, and expecting that I'll come around once I realize how much I miss her. The delusion is actually impressive. Even after everything that's happened, she still thinks this is just a temporary consequence that she can wait out or manipulate her way around. Brady ended the conversation by telling me that I deserve way better than someone who views kindness as manipulation and generosity as control. He said he's glad I found out who she really was before we got married, because this behavior would have only gotten worse over time. After talking to Brady, I felt like I finally had clarity about the whole situation. This wasn't about me being too sensitive or controlling. This was about Scarlett being fundamentally dishonest about what she wanted from our relationship and using manipulation tactics to try to get the benefits without the commitment. Sunday, I decided to be proactive about protecting myself going forward. I changed all my passwords, updated my banking security, and documented all the financial support I've provided over the past 2 years. Not because I think she'll try anything illegal, but because I want a clear record of what our actual financial arrangement was in case she tries to rewrite history publicly. I also reached out to a few mutual friends to give them a heads up about what really happened at the party and why we broke up. Not to trash Scarlett, but to make sure they heard my side before she had a chance to spin the story completely. Several of them had already heard from Scarlett that I kicked her out for not being grateful enough about a vacation. When I explained the actual sequence of events, the public humiliation, the family coordination, her admission about deliberately trying to manipulate me, they were pretty shocked. One friend told me that Scarlett had asked her if she thought I'd be willing to let Scarlett stay in the apartment until she found a new place, since I'm usually so understanding and helpful. Even after everything, she's still trying to find ways to benefit from my generosity while refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing on her part. The entitlement is actually breathtaking. She humiliated me publicly, admitted to deliberately manipulating our relationship, and is still expecting me to provide support and assistance because that's just who I am as a person. But that's exactly the problem. She's been counting on my generosity and conflict avoidance to let her get away with increasingly disrespectful behavior. The Iceland party was just the culmination of months of testing boundaries and seeing how much she could get away with. Well, now she knows. The answer is not much. I'm not angry anymore, which is weird. I was furious for the first few days, but now I just feel relieved that I found out who she really was before we got married and possibly had kids together. Imagine dealing with this kind of manipulation and dishonesty in a divorce situation with custody issues. The lease situation is finalized and she's completely moved out. I changed the locks yesterday, and honestly, the apartment feels lighter without her energy in it. I'd gotten so used to walking on eggshells and trying to avoid conflict that I forgot what it felt like to just relax in my own space. Next week, I'm going to start planning that solo vacation to somewhere warm. Maybe it's time I focused on building a life with someone who actually wants to be in it, instead of someone who sees my efforts as manipulation and my generosity as control. Thanks again to everyone who responded to my original post. Your support really helped me see this situation clearly and trust my own judgment about what's acceptable in a relationship. Update 2. Okay, so I wasn't planning to update again this soon, but things have gotten really intense over the past week and I honestly need to process this somewhere. You guys have been so supportive and helpful that I feel like I owe you the continuation of this mess. First off, thanks to everyone who reached out after my last update. A lot of you called out how manipulative Scarlett's behavior was and how her family enabled it, which really helped me feel confident that I was handling things appropriately. Some of you shared similar experiences, and that made me feel less alone in this whole situation. So where I left off, Scarlett had moved out completely, and I thought we were done. I was wrong. She's been escalating her attempts to get back into my life in ways I didn't see coming. It started Monday when she showed up at my workplace during lunch. I work at a mid-sized engineering firm, and she just walked into the lobby asking for me. Security called up, and I went down to see what she wanted, thinking maybe she'd forgotten something important at the apartment. She immediately launched into this whole speech about how she'd been thinking about everything and realized she made a terrible mistake. She said she'd been scared of commitment and pushed me away because she was afraid of getting hurt, but now she understood how much she loved me and wanted to work things out. The thing is, she delivered this whole speech loud enough for other people in the lobby to hear. My coworkers were walking by, the security guard was listening, the receptionist was obviously paying attention. It felt very calculated to put me in a position where I'd look like a jerk if I didn't respond positively. I told her we needed to have this conversation somewhere private, not in my workplace lobby. She immediately got tearful and said she'd tried texting and calling, but I wasn't responding, so she had to come find me, which wasn't true. I'd been responding to her texts, just not giving her the answers she wanted. We stepped outside and she continued with the apology tour. She admitted that humiliating me at the party was wrong and said she'd been dealing with stress about our relationship in unhealthy ways. She claimed she'd been talking to a therapist about her behavior patterns and realized she'd been sabotaging our relationship because she was afraid of happiness. The apology sounded genuine until she started talking about how we could rebuild trust. Her plan involved me letting her move back in temporarily while we worked on things, with the understanding that she'd contribute financially once she got back on her feet. She also wanted me to add her back to the credit cards temporarily so she could handle some expenses that had come up. When I pointed out that this sounded like she just wanted the financial benefits back, she got defensive and said I was being cynical and untrusting. She accused me of punishing her instead of trying to heal our relationship, and said that if I really loved her, I'd be willing to take some risk to rebuild what we had. I told her that trust is rebuilt through actions over time, not through immediately restoring all the benefits she'd lost. If she wanted to work on our relationship, we could start with coffee dates and actual conversations about what went wrong, not with me providing housing and financial support again. She didn't like that answer. She said that expecting her to rebuild my trust while struggling financially was setting her up to fail, and that I was being deliberately cruel by keeping her in a vulnerable position. According to her, real love means supporting your partner even when they mess up, and my unwillingness to help her was proof that I never really cared about her. The conversation went in circles for an hour. Every boundary I tried to set, she reframed as me being vindictive or unforgiving. Every time I explained why I couldn't just trust her immediately after what happened, she turned it into me being the problem for not believing in second chances. Eventually, I told her I needed time to think about everything she'd said and that we should continue this conversation later. She asked when later would be, and I said I'd text her in a few days. She clearly wasn't happy with that timeline but agreed. Tuesday, she started the text bombing. Not angry texts, but these long emotional messages about how much she missed me and how empty her life felt without me. She'd send photos of places we'd been together, screenshots of texts from our early relationship, memories of good times we'd shared. It was actually pretty manipulative because she was trying to use my emotions against my judgment. Wednesday, she escalated to calling my mom. My parents live about 2 hours away and don't really get involved in my relationship drama, but Scarlett called my mom crying and saying she was worried about me because I seemed depressed and angry since our breakup. She asked my mom to talk to me about forgiveness and moving forward. My mom called me that evening asking if I was okay and telling me that Scarlett had reached out. When I explained what had actually happened, the public humiliation, the manipulation, the family involvement, my mom was pretty shocked. She said Scarlett had painted a very different picture where I'd kicked her out over a minor disagreement and was now refusing to even discuss reconciliation. My mom told me she'd politely told Scarlett that our relationship wasn't something she could help with, but she was concerned about Scarlett involving her in private relationship issues. She also said that Scarlett had asked if my parents would be willing to talk to me about the importance of forgiveness in relationships. The audacity was incredible. She was trying to recruit my family to pressure me into taking her back. Thursday, things got really weird. Scarlett showed up at the grocery store I usually shop at and just happened to be there when I was picking up stuff for dinner. She acted surprised to see me and suggested we shop together since we were both there anyway. I realized she'd been tracking my location somehow. We'd shared location access on our phones during the relationship for practical reasons, and apparently she'd never turned it off. She'd been watching my daily routine and timing her appearances to seem coincidental. I immediately disabled location sharing and told her that stalking my movements was crossing a serious line. She got upset and said she wasn't stalking. She was just trying to find opportunities to talk to me since I was being so resistant to communication. She said she'd hoped that seeing each other in a normal setting might help us have a natural conversation. When I told her that manipulating situations to force contact was exactly the kind of behavior that made me not trust her, she started crying in the middle of the grocery store. She said she was desperate because she felt like I'd already made up my mind about our relationship and wasn't giving her a real chance to make things right. That's when I realized she fundamentally didn't understand what she'd done wrong. She thought this was about me being hurt and needing time to get over it, not about her demonstrating a pattern of manipulation and disrespect that made me question whether she was capable of a healthy relationship. I told her that her behavior over the past week was actually making things worse, not better. The workplace ambush, involving my parents tracking my location, All of that showed me that she still didn't respect my boundaries or understand appropriate behavior. She got angry and said I was being impossible to please. According to her, I wanted her to fight for our relationship but then criticized her for every attempt she made. She said I was moving the goalposts and making it impossible for her to do the right thing. I explained that fighting for a relationship means working on yourself and demonstrating change, not pressuring and manipulating the other person into giving you another chance. She didn't seem to understand the difference. Friday was when things really hit a breaking point. Scarlett called Brady and asked him to set up a family meeting where everyone could sit down and talk through what happened at the party. She told him she'd been reflecting on her behavior and wanted to apologize properly to everyone, but also wanted me to be there so we could all work toward healing as a family. Brady called me to ask if I'd be willing to participate. When I asked him what Scarlett had told him about our conversations that week, it became clear she'd left out the workplace visit, involving my parents, and the location tracking. She'd made it sound like I was refusing all communication and she was desperately trying to make amends. I filled Brady in on what had actually been happening, and he was pretty disturbed. He said the family meeting request made more sense now. She was trying to use family pressure to force a reconciliation. Brady told me he'd been having his own concerns about Scarlett's behavior since our last conversation. Apparently, she'd been reaching out to different family members individually, sharing different versions of our breakup and asking each of them to talk to me or advocate for her. She'd told his mom that I was being vindictive about money, told his sister that I was refusing to communicate, told his dad that I was being influenced by bad advice from friends. Each family member thought they were getting the full story, but when Brady started comparing notes, he realized Scarlett had been manipulating the narrative with each person to get them on her side. The family meeting was supposed to be her big move to get everyone together in one room, where they could all pressure me to forgive her and take her back. Brady said he was planning to decline hosting it because he was starting to see a pattern of manipulation that made him uncomfortable. Saturday, I decided to be proactive and called Norma directly. I wanted to have an honest conversation with Scarlett's mom about what was happening, because I suspected Scarlett had been feeding her a distorted version of events too. The conversation was really eye-opening. Norma admitted that she'd been concerned about Scarlett's version of events because some details didn't make sense. When I explained the timeline, the public humiliation, Scarlett's admission about deliberately manipulating our relationship, her escalating behavior since the breakup, Norma was quiet for a long time. Then she told me something that put everything in perspective. She said Scarlett has had this pattern since high school of creating drama in relationships and then playing victim when there are consequences. She'd hoped Scarlett had outgrown it, but watching what happened at Brady's party reminded her of similar incidents from years past. Norma apologized for her family's role in the party humiliation. She said they'd been hearing Scarlett's complaints about our relationship for months and bought into her narrative that I was controlling and overly sensitive. When Scarlett started mocking me at the party, they saw it as her finally standing up for herself instead of recognizing it as cruel and inappropriate. She also told me that Scarlett had been calling her multiple times a day since our breakup, alternating between crying about how much she missed me and raging about how unfairly I was treating her. Norma said she'd started screening Scarlett's calls because the conversations were becoming exhausting and manipulative. The most telling thing Norma said was that she'd noticed Scarlett only seemed to miss specific things about our relationship: the financial stability, the nice apartment, not having to worry about bills. When Norma asked Scarlett what she missed about me as a person, Scarlett struggled to give specific answers beyond general statements about me being a good guy. Norma ended the conversation by saying she thought I was handling the situation appropriately and that enabling Scarlett's behavior wouldn't help anyone in the long run. She said she was going to have a serious conversation with Scarlett about her manipulation tactics and encourage her to get professional help instead of trying to force a reconciliation. Sunday, Scarlett showed up at my apartment building. The doorman called up and I told him not to let her up, but she waited in the lobby for 3 hours hoping I'd eventually come down. When I finally left to meet a friend for dinner, she cornered me in the parking garage. She was visibly upset and said her family was turning against her because of lies I'd been spreading. She accused me of manipulating her family the same way I'd manipulated her, and said I was systematically destroying her support system to force her to come back to me. The projection was incredible. She was accusing me of the exact manipulation tactics she'd been using for weeks. She demanded to know why I was working so hard to turn everyone against her instead of just talking to her directly about fixing our relationship. When I pointed out that I'd been talking to her all week and she'd been escalating her behavior instead of respecting my boundaries, she said that my boundaries were unreasonable and designed to make reconciliation impossible. According to Scarlett, expecting her to rebuild trust gradually was actually manipulation, because it kept her in a powerless position. She said that if I really wanted to work things out, I'd be willing to take a leap of faith and trust her immediately. I finally told her directly that I didn't want to work things out. The relationship was over, not because of the party incident alone, but because of the pattern of manipulation and disrespect that had been building for months. Her behavior since the breakup had only confirmed that she wasn't capable of the kind of honest, respectful partnership I wanted. She completely lost it, started yelling about how I'd wasted 3 years of her life and led her on about our future together. She said I'd trapped her into depending on me financially and then abandoned her when she tried to assert her independence. The rewriting of history was stunning. Asserting independence apparently meant publicly humiliating me and admitting to deliberately manipulating our relationship. Security came down and asked her to leave. She left, but not before telling me that I'd regret throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. That was Sunday night. Today is Tuesday, and I haven't heard from her since, which honestly feels like relief. I'm hoping she's finally accepted that this is really over and will focus on moving forward instead of trying to manipulate her way back into my life. I've been reflecting on this whole experience and realizing how much I'd normalized unhealthy behavior in our relationship. The constant criticism disguised as jokes, the dismissal of my feelings, the manipulation tactics. I'd adapted to all of it gradually without recognizing how toxic it had become. The Iceland trip humiliation wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the most public and undeniable example of how she really felt about me and our relationship. I'm actually grateful it happened, as weird as that sounds. If she'd continued being subtly manipulative and disrespectful, I might have married her and spent years trying to fix something that was fundamentally broken. Now I know what I won't accept in a relationship going forward. Public humiliation, manipulation tactics, involving family members in private conflicts, violating boundaries, all deal breakers. I'm planning that solo vacation next month, somewhere warm where I can think about what I actually want in a partner and a relationship, instead of what I'm willing to tolerate to avoid conflict. Thanks again to everyone who's been following this story and offering support. Your perspectives really helped me trust my own judgment and maintain healthy boundaries even when it felt difficult. Final update. Alright guys, this is probably going to be my last update on this whole situation. But I wanted to share what happened because it really brings everything full circle and honestly validates every decision I made. So it's been about 3 weeks since my last update, and I thought everything was finally settling down. Scarlett had stopped the constant contact attempts. Her family seemed to understand the real situation, and I was starting to feel like I could move forward without looking over my shoulder. Then last Thursday, Brady called me with some information that honestly blew my mind and explained so much about Scarlett's behavior throughout our entire relationship. Brady had been feeling guilty about his family's role in the party situation and decided to have a real conversation with Scarlett about what happened and why. He went over to where she's been staying with her sister and basically told her that the family was concerned about her pattern of creating relationship drama and wanted to understand what was really going on. That conversation lasted 3 hours, and what came out was incredible. Scarlett basically admitted to Brady that she never actually wanted to marry me. She'd been having doubts about our relationship for over a year, but felt trapped because of the financial situation and couldn't figure out how to get out without losing everything. But here's the kicker. The Iceland trip was never her dream. She made that up early in our relationship because she thought it sounded romantic and adventurous, and I latched onto it so enthusiastically that she felt like she had to maintain the lie. She's apparently never had any real interest in travel or the Northern Lights. She just saw it in a movie once and thought it sounded like something a worldly, interesting person would want to do. When I surprised her with the trip, she panicked because she realized she'd have to go through with this elaborate experience that she never actually wanted. The whole time we were in Iceland, she was miserable, but felt like she had to pretend to be grateful because I'd spent so much money and effort on something she'd claimed was her biggest dream. The crying when she saw the Northern Lights? Fake? The posts about how magical everything was? Performance? The gratitude and happiness? All an act because she felt trapped into appreciating something she never wanted in the first place. Brady said she broke down crying while telling him this because she realized how messed up the whole situation was. She'd created this elaborate lie about her interests and dreams, then felt resentful toward me for believing her and trying to make those fake dreams come true. The party humiliation was her way of finally expressing her real feelings about the trip and our relationship, but she did it in the cruelest way possible because she was angry at herself for creating the situation and angry at me for not somehow knowing she was lying. When Brady asked her why she didn't just tell me the truth about not wanting to go to Iceland, she said she was afraid I'd be hurt or angry about her lying. and she thought it would be easier to just go through with it and hopefully the trip would be better than she expected. But here's where it gets even more messed up. Scarlett also admitted to Brady that she's been lying about a lot of other things throughout our relationship. Her interests, her opinions about movies and books, even some of her food preferences. She'd been mirroring what she thought I wanted to hear instead of being honest about who she actually was. She told Brady that she felt like she had to be a perfect girlfriend to keep me interested. So she researched what I liked and pretended to share those interests. The Pinterest boards full of Iceland photos? She created those after I mentioned loving travel, specifically to give me something to latch onto. Brady asked her why she stayed in a relationship where she felt like she had to fake everything, and her answer was brutally honest. She liked the lifestyle. She liked not having to worry about money, and she thought maybe she could learn to actually love the things she was pretending to love. But instead of growing into those interests, she grew resentful about having to maintain the performance. Every time I'd get excited about planning trips or talking about shared interests, she felt more trapped in this fake version of herself she'd created. The manipulation tactics she used after our breakup? She admitted those were calculated attempts to get me to take her back without her having to give up the financial benefits. She figured if she could make me feel guilty enough or pressure me through family intervention, I'd cave and let her back into the apartment and onto the credit cards. Brady was pretty shaken by this conversation because he realized his sister had essentially been running a long-term con on me, pretending to be someone completely different to secure financial stability while secretly resenting me for believing her act. When he asked her what she actually wanted in life and relationships, she couldn't give him clear answers. She'd been focused on finding someone to take care of her financially for so long that she'd never really figured out who she was or what she genuinely wanted. Brady called me that night and shared all of this because he felt like I deserved to know the truth about what I'd actually been dealing with. He also wanted to apologize again for his family's role in enabling her behavior without understanding the full scope of what was happening. The conversation with Brady was honestly both validating and heartbreaking. Validating because it confirmed that my instincts about the manipulation and dishonesty were correct. Heartbreaking because it meant I'd spent 3 years in love with someone who didn't actually exist. The woman I thought I was building a life with. The one who loved travel and adventure. Who shared my interests. Who appreciated thoughtful gestures. That person was entirely fictional. The real Scarlett was someone I never got to know because she was too busy performing a role she thought would keep me interested. It explains so much about our relationship dynamics. Why she seemed uncomfortable whenever I'd planned surprises or special experiences. Why she'd get weird when I'd reference shared interests or inside jokes. Why she seemed to have trouble making decisions about things she supposedly cared about. She wasn't being indecisive. She was trying to maintain character consistency for a role she'd created while having no actual opinions about the things she was pretending to love. The cruelest part is that if she'd just been honest with me from the beginning, we might have found genuine common ground. I fell in love with who I thought she was, but I might have also fallen in love with who she actually was, if she'd given me the chance to know that person. Instead, she chose manipulation and performance, then grew resentful toward me for believing her act and trying to build a relationship based on what she was telling me about herself. Brady also told me that Scarlett has been struggling since our conversation in the parking garage. The reality of losing the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to has hit her hard, and she's been having to face some uncomfortable truths about her approach to relationships and life in general. She's apparently been calling her ex-boyfriends trying to reconnect, which makes sense now that I understand her pattern. She finds guys who can provide financial stability, performs whatever role she thinks will keep them interested, then tries to maintain those connections even after relationships end. So she always has backup options. Brady said the family is encouraging her to get professional help because they're starting to recognize how unhealthy her relationship patterns are. The lying, the manipulation, the inability to form genuine connections. It's not just about romantic relationships. She's been doing similar things with friendships and family relationships too. I'm honestly grateful that Brady shared all of this with me because it gave me closure I didn't even know I needed. For weeks, I'd been questioning whether I'd been too harsh or unforgiving, wondering if there was something I could have done differently to save our relationship. Now I know there was no real relationship to save. I was in love with the character she was playing, not an actual person. The conflict and manipulation weren't about relationship problems that could be worked through. They were about her trying to maintain a false identity while resenting the effort it required. The Iceland trip humiliation wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a drunken mistake. It was her finally dropping the mask and expressing her real feelings about a situation she'd created through years of lying. I spent this past weekend really processing everything, and honestly, I feel more at peace with the whole situation than I have since this started. I'm not angry anymore, which surprises me. I'm just sad that she felt like she had to create an elaborate lie instead of trusting that someone might love her for who she actually was. But I'm also relieved that I found out before we got married or had kids. Imagine building a family with someone and then discovering that your entire foundation was based on her performing a role rather than sharing a genuine connection. I've been thinking about what I want going forward, and honestly, authenticity is going to be my top priority in any future relationship. I want someone who tells me when they don't like something I suggest, who has their own genuine interests and opinions, who doesn't feel like they need to perform to keep me interested. The irony is that Scarlett probably would have been more attractive to me if she'd been honest about her actual personality and interests. The lying and manipulation were way bigger turnoffs than any differences in taste or lifestyle preferences would have been. I'm still planning that solo vacation next month. Actually, I'm more excited about it now because I get to rediscover what I actually enjoy without trying to accommodate someone else's performed preferences. Maybe I'll find some new interests of my own. Or maybe I'll just enjoy doing things I genuinely love, without second-guessing whether they're impressive enough for someone else. Brady asked if I wanted to hear updates about how Scarlett is doing, and I told him no. I hope she gets the help she needs and figures out who she actually is underneath all the performance, but that's not my responsibility anymore. I'm closing this chapter of my life with a lot more wisdom about red flags and authentic connection. The next relationship I have is going to be built on honesty from day one, even if that means harder conversations and more vulnerability. Thanks to everyone who followed this story and offered support and perspective. Your comments really helped me trust my instincts and maintain healthy boundaries when it felt difficult. Sometimes you need outside perspective to see manipulation clearly, especially when you're emotionally invested in the outcome. I'm not sure what comes next, but I know it's going to be based on truth instead of performance. And that feels like a huge upgrade. Time to focus on building a life that's authentically mine, instead of trying to accommodate someone else's fictional version of themselves. Oh, and I still have that replacement Aurora certificate framed in my apartment. Not because I'm holding on to the past, but because it represents something I'm genuinely proud of. Taking care of someone I loved and putting effort into their happiness. The fact that it was based on lies doesn't diminish the sincerity of my intentions. Next time, I'll just make sure I'm doing thoughtful things for someone who's actually being honest about who they are and what they want.